In this section, we're going to make your helicopter really look like a helicopter. We're going to install and fit all the body panels. But before we do that, we have to install the main rotor assembly and the bearing assemblies. Also, I want you to have your foot pedal cross shaft installed and make sure the body pads are installed. When I'm working on the main rotor system, I like to use a riser. And that'll be especially helpful when you're working up here mounting this bearing.
Refer to the Construction Manual, Section 8, for components and prints. The rotor system is temporarily installed at this point to help position the body and doghouse for assembly. It's extremely important that you read Section 8 and 11 of the manual and review the entire video of both sections before beginning the actual fitting and assembly. The main rotor shaft as received from Rotorway. This is the main rotor thrust bearing and the bearing flanges as received. At this time, mark this flange as the top front. Install the main rotor thrust bearings and flanges in the hood bracket on the airframe. Note: the bearing flanges are bolted below the hood bracket. Use the 4 3/8-inch bolts found on E49 Card 1F to bolt the bearing flange assembly to the hood bracket. The rear edge of the flanges may need to be ground off so as not to interfere with the airframe tube under the hood bracket. Locate E24 Card 3F, the upper engine mount clevis. Before placing the upper engine mount in position, check for any burrs that may interfere with proper installation of the engine mount. Check for any burrs on the bushings that pass through the square tubes of the airframe and file as necessary. Clamp the upper engine mount clevis in position to the bottom of the square drive tubes. Use a piece of 1/8 inch scrap material between the bottom of the square drive tube and the rear of the clevis as shown. Do not cover the holes with the clamps. Before drilling, make sure the clevis is against the lower lateral square drive tube. Drill the bolt holes through the clevis using the bushings in the airframe tubes as a guide. Note the 2 bolts that hold the clevis to the front cross tube are 5/16 of an inch and the rear bolt is 1/4 inch. After drilling one hole, install the bolt to keep the proper alignment. Drill the rear part of the bracket with a right angle drill. This is the lower bearing flange assembly. Clamp the lower flange to the front of the square drive tube on the airframe. Using a large builder's square, check to see if the top of the flange is even with the top of the square drive tubes. Adjust the flange to make it even. If the angle of the flange is not 90 degrees, you may grind the surface that is against the square tube to get the bracket 90 degrees, but do not remove material that will leave the flange part less than 1/10 of an inch. With the clamps holding the flange to the front of the square drive tube so that the tops are even, draw a line flush with the bottom of the square drive tube using a felt marker. Transfer the mark to the other side and cut the excess with a bandsaw. It's necessary to remove this excess material so the bottom of the flange will not interfere with the upper engine clevis. Radius the corners. Assemble the lower main shaft bearing and clamp it to the front of the square drive tube. Note that the hub and shaft have index marks on the bottom to make sure you reinstall the hub in the same orientation because of the close tolerance fit of these 3 bolts. Before removing the 3 bolts in the sprocket hub, index the hub and shaft so you can reference from above. Remove the 3 bolts from the main shaft and sprocket hub. Clean the main rotor shaft with acetone and check the fit on the upper bearing and lower bearing. Remove any burrs that may interfere with a smooth fit. Install the main shaft by lowering it from above into the top bearing, then into the lower bearing. Level the square drive tubes laterally and fore and aft. Shim under the skids to level the square drive tubes. When the shaft is installed, it must be 90 degrees to the square drive tubes, both laterally and fore and aft. Use the digital level to measure the position. Move the lower bearing weldment laterally until the shaft is 90 degrees to the square drive tubes. If the shaft is not level fore and aft, the holes in the hood bracket may be elongated if necessary to achieve fore-aft alignment. Occasionally, this may not provide enough movement because the main bearing flanges might come into contact with the airframe tube under the hood bracket. If this happens, the rear of the bearing flanges can be ground off slightly to allow them to be moved back.
Okay.
Rotorway also recommends the use of a large builder's square for checking squareness. Verify before drilling the 5/16 inch holes in the bearing flange. Check that the main shaft is 90 degrees to the square drive tube and the top of the bearing flange and the square drive tube is even. Drill the holes in the lower bearing flange using the square drive tube bushings as guides. With the supplied bolts, install the lower bearing and upper mount clevis to the square drive tubes. This is the pedal cross tube as received from Rotorway. Do not paint this cross tube. Located on E16, card 1F, are the bushings and bolts necessary to temporarily install the cross tube. It's necessary to install the cross tube to verify the floor pan position. To fit the pedal shaft to the airframe brackets, install the nylon bushing into one end of the tube with the aluminum bushing. Now bolt the aluminum bushing and the nylon bushing to the airframe bracket as shown here. Position that end against the airframe bracket and mark the other end just inside the nylon bushing. Cut the tube to the correct length. Install the bushings and place the tube between the airframe brackets. Install the washers and bolts. There should be no end-to-end play, or the pedal cross tube should not be binding after the bolts have been installed. Refer to construction print E32-2000 A600 Talon, body details. Many of the body panels have pre-drilled master cleco holes. These holes are for initial alignment only and may not necessarily be in the right position to be used for fasteners after all the panels are fitted. Before assembling the body panels, sand the edges with medium 100 grit sandpaper. Pre-assemble the entire body with clecos before attaching any nut plates or Zeus fasteners. This gives you the opportunity to shift or relocate components somewhat if there is any unacceptable mismatch. Any unused alignment holes may be filled with Bondo. The A600 Talon tub as received from Rotorway. The tub requires 4 areas that need to be cut out for the front and rear landing gear. These areas are described in the gel coat of the tub. Cut only the amount needed to fit the tub to the airframe. Final trimming will be completed later as necessary. You'll need to split the tub laterally just aft of the front landing gear holes. Builder tooltip. The rotor zip is a great tool to use for this cut. Use the fiberglass doubler to make a joggle to connect the 2 tub parts. Make cutouts to allow for the reinforcement wood strips. Cleco the doubler in position and make cutouts for the front landing gear holes. Allow for at least 1-inch lip on the doubler. Secure the fiberglass doubler to the tub with fiberglass mat and resin between the doubler and tub. Then fiberglass a piece of cloth over the top of the doubler. Be sure to use several clamps and clecos to hold the position. The front tub or chin is secured with 832 screws and nut plates, spaced 2.5 inches apart. Install clicos to fit the tub parts together. Be sure to space the holes to remain clear of the pant legging. This will allow the front tub to be removed for service without removing the pant leggings. The seat back as received from Rotorway. Install the seat back on the airframe. Push the seat to the rear and to the pilot side as far as it will go. Temporarily hold this position with a quick grip clamp. The seat back is the only part of the fiberglass body that is securely bolted to the airframe after the final fit of the complete body. The fit of all other panels is determined by the location of the seat back on the airframe. Once the body is completed, the seat back can be shifted slightly on the airframe for a better fit. On final install, the seat back will be bolted in 6 places. You may secure the seat back at this time with 2 clicos. However, the quick grip clamp allows a little more flexibility when installing the other fiberglass parts.
Okay.
Shims may be added between the seat and the curved airframe tubes to achieve a better fit and to level the body. Shims may also be added to the bolts that hold the seat back to the 1-inch cross tube. Locate the master holes and install 2 clicos. Hold the tub to the seat back on each side. Note, it may be necessary to trim these corners of the tub to fit the seat back. Install the front tub. Set the floor pan on the airframe. Install the front tub with clicos. Attach the chin to the floor pan using the master holes. Pull the floor pan forward and clamp the seat back and floor pan here to hold the position. Check alignment by comparing the distance from the front corners of the airframe to the tub on each side. The tub should be centered. Adjust the body support pads as needed to raise the floor pan up off the pedal cross tube. Check and sand as necessary, a smooth straight edge is shown. These are the front upper fuselage cowlings as received from Rotorway. Use clicos in the master holes to install these cowlings. Use as few clicos as possible during this first fitting process. Hold the upper cowling level and drill the rear clico hole. These are the rear upper fuselage cowlings as received from Rotorway. Remove the upper cowling passenger side and hold in place with rear upper fuselage to check the fit. Drill the cleco hole in the area where the four corners meet and install a cleco. On some front upper panels, trimming this notch may help the fit. Some sanding may be necessary to fit the panels to match. Mark the holes with 2.5-inch centers and install some clecos as shown. Do the same fit for the pilot side. Check the fit of the top rear panels. They may be overlapped to reduce the opening around the tail boom. These are the rear lower fuselage cowlings as received from Rotorway. They each have a scribed area that need to be cut out for the rear landing gear.
Okay.
Hold in place to verify where the opening for the rear landing gear should be. Open the cutouts for the rear landing gear only as much as necessary. Match drill a hole in the upper corner of the panel. Use the hole in the four corners as a reference. Now drill and install a cleco at the rear of the panel. Make sure to match the seam of the two panels. Zeus fasteners are spaced 5 inches apart. Measure from this corner for Zeus placement. Install a cleco. Now do the same thing to the other lower panel. Remember, you can add shims if necessary between the seat back and airframe to improve overall fit of the entire body as it sits on the airframe. Some sanding and trimming will be necessary for the final fit. The rear panels should fit evenly all around the tail boom. Note, when the body has been final fitted, there should be enough clearance around the tail boom for the weather stripping that will be glued in place as shown on this finished ship. Do not fasten the bottom overlap yet. This will be trimmed later when the radiator is installed. Clamp both door posts in position as shown. Stretch a tape measure around the upper rear curve of the windscreen and the two door posts as shown. Note the measurement. The roof panel as received from Rotorway. Use the same measurement to install the cabin roof panel. This will ensure that the body is in the correct width in that area. Insert clecos in the two front locations of the roof panel as shown. Do not fasten the back edge of the roof panel at this time. Use caution when handling the plexiglass windscreen. The windscreen hole spacing is 2.5 inches. Lay out index marks for the holes. Do not place the holes in the corners. Start approximately 1.5 inches from end. Edge spacing of the holes will be determined after trimming for fit. Place the windscreen on the body and position it for best fit. The windscreen should be allowed to fit naturally without being forced into position. Use caution when positioning.